Okay, so we now have Seb talking about customizing the data manager, which is a feature in 10.9. Seb joined Pixelate 2 years ago?
Exactly 2 years ago.
My goodness me. 2 years ago, and works on the core platform team, works on Preside and other products we build on top of Preside, and is a lead developer. I know he was did a lot of Mura contributions before he discovered the true way. I jest. Cool, take it away, Seb.
Right. Yeah, so I've been developing for the web for quite a long time now. Since '96 was when I started. In CFML since 1999. I found the other day my installation disk for ColdFusion 4.0, which is what I started on. So going back away. Yeah, freelance for 10 years. I spent 5 years working at Auto Trader, and as Dom said, I joined Pixelate a couple of years ago. And I am with my partner. We are sort of serial dog rehomers, and there's our pups. And on the left there is Buddy, who joins me when I come into the office. So he's a Pixelate dog as well. Well, he's one of two Pixelate dogs. He's the quiet one. So I'll start by going through the data manager basics. We touched on it very briefly in the last presentation. So yes, you can add a data manager group name to your object definition, and then it will appear in the data manager. And that gives you a very basic interface to managing your data with your listings, add, edit, delete, your basic CRUD methods. And that's pretty much what was there up until 10.9. So here we have, there's a whole bunch of objects in the data manager. They get automatically listed in their groups. You have a listing of your records, and you have basic edit pages. So the simple customizations you could always make. You could add data manager grid fields. You could define those. You can say which fields you can search on in your listing. You can say what your default sort order is going to be, and you can also define which operations are going to be allowed or disallowed on that object. We'll go into that in a minute. And the other thing you can do to customize Data Manager is you can customize the admin forms, and Jan is going to talk more about that this afternoon, so I'm not really going to look at that now. So here are some simple customizations. So you can say, yes, I want this object to exist in the project data manager group. By default, the listing shows the label and the creation and modification date. Usually you'll want to change that to something more useful. So here we can say I want the label, a date, and a list of its regions. The search fields, by default, it'll search on any fields that are listed in the grid, but you can also customize that. So you can say, I want it to be able to find a record on this data, even if it's not being shown in the listing. And you can say, yes, I want to sort it in date order or whatever. And you can say, yes, through the data manager, I don't want to allow users to delete these records. And you can also say you can specify which operations are allowed or which ones are disallowed. I'm not quite sure what happens if you combine the two. It might do something weird.
Disallowed will take away if you duplicate.
Right, okay. But often you might want a custom admin interface. So if you want to have your object managed outside the basic data manager system, outside the main screen, so have it as a first-class citizen of your admin rather than just go through the data manager and picking the object. If you want to have custom content on the listing or the view pages, you want to set up custom permissioning on an object, or add extra processing actions, whether it's extra custom validation to happen before you save, or actions that are going to happen after you've saved your object. The old solution was fairly quick and dirty. It was done through the developer console, and there was a command that was called new crud admin, and that would generate a bunch of admin boilerplate for an object with a whole bunch of code. Numerous files, probably 10, 12 files are created just for the basic functionality. A lot of duplication of code. It wouldn't benefit from all the features of Data Manager. Anything you've created like that would miss out on any updates in Preside, and your objects would tend either to exist in here or in the Data Manager. If they existed in both, then depending on where you edited it, different things would happen to your data. So it wasn't ideal, and it was officially retired in Preside 10.9. So that command no longer exists in the dev tools. So in 10.9, to replace it, we introduced the new and improved Data Manager. One of the key things of this is every record now, the old default when you click on a row would be to show the edit screen for that object, but now there is an automatically generated record view screen, so you can just look at the data and it gives a good representation of your data and all its linked data as well, and you can navigate through that and link to other records that are related. You can customize the admin for your object, and that is all done by convention, and so I'll show you exactly how that happens later. But basically you would create a handler in the admin data manager folder, and you would name it according to your object name, and then you can put whatever functions you're going to customize in there. There are a lot of customization points. The documentation on this is very good and comprehensive, and so I'll probably show you that a bit later. It minimizes the duplication of code, which is always a good thing. And anything in here benefits from it gets all the benefits of the data manager, plus whatever customizations you add on top. And it allows easily for objects to become, so the admin for an object to become a first-class citizen of the admin, so it can have its own menu item and not be managed through the data manager listing of objects, but still have all the same benefits. So the record view screen, it's a new screen which shows the data in a read-only format, and relationships, depending on the type of relationship, will either show as a link to the related object, and you can navigate through those, or if it's a many to one or many to many relationship, then it shows one to many, or many to many. It will show as a mini record browser, which you can in turn search and filter. The default view is functional, but it will often benefit from some tweaking, some customization. So this is a very simple object record, and this is out of the box the default view. So you can see on there you've got your object data down the left, you've got the system data down the right, like the ID and the modification dates. You've also got your version browser at the top, so you can go back through previous versions of this object. this record. Now customizations, they allow for various things. You can add extra content to various positions within a view. If you want, you can completely replace a view. You don't have to use that, but it'll still be your, so you can create a completely new page which will be what shows when you say, I want to view this record. You can add buttons to the interface. You can add new actions to be taken on this object. You can add complete new pages to your admin for this object. You can define pre and post hooks for various data operations, like before and after you save things, before you and after you perform your validation, and things like that. You've got full control over how the breadcrumbs appear along the admin. You can have complex custom permissioning, which can be based on any number of things. So the permissions may be based, for example, on data contained within the record itself, which wouldn't have been possible before without jumping through a few hoops. And you can also write your own customizations. So if you're writing an extension, you can define a customization point, and then if someone is implementing your extension, they can make use of the that's probably not very well put, is it? The customization that you've defined, they can then tap into that, just like you're tapping into the customizations that are defined in Preside core. We'll have a look at a few just real-world examples. This is a little stock management app. This is all sort of dummy test data, so it doesn't. It's all fairly meaningless. But here you can see you've got a tabbed interface on the left. You've got inventory items on the right. You've got order templates. Within that, you've got your default listing, but you've got this wrapper around it, and you've got some custom actions up here. Here is one that includes extra information at the top and a warning or information box there, and we just say, okay, we want to put this in before we render the listing. Here we've got this is basically an alternate listing view, but it is presented as a calendar. And at the top there you see you can, if you wanted to, you could switch into the normal listing view, but you've got the calendar view here, and you can click on one of these and you can scroll through the calendar. So it just gives you a different way of visualizing your record data.
That's actually an extension you can just install and it will work as well. The calendar thing.
Yes?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So you know.
Right, yes.
Sorry.
Here you've got sort of data down the left, and down the right we've got a chart which shows predicted stock levels as time goes on. And here, this is an internal system we have which we use to track support usage. And so you can see on the left here we've got a chart. So for a client we've got the support usage down the side. On the right we can see invoices, we can see projects, we can see contracts, we can see notes that we've got for this client. So here we are completely replacing the view page for this client, and with all sorts of links off to other pages within it. And here, yes, you can see this is also a view page. You've got a tabbed interface with a number of things here, but you can also see here, I was talking about it becoming a first-class citizen of the admin. So you've got, yes, your CRM sidebar menu item on the left, and you've got contacts, organisation, and directory within there. And you can see you've got home organisations in the breadcrumbs. So although this doesn't appear to exist within the data manager, it is still making full use of everything that the data manager offers. Right, I'm going to now do a little live demo, and let's hope it works. Oh, have I closed the wrong page? I have closed the wrong page. Hang on. Come on. There we go. Let's log into the admin. So I'm going to start off by showing a little demo with an old favourite, which is the extension which imports data from the Star Wars API, which gives you a nice bunch of data to work with. It's great for demos. And so if we go into the data manager, we can see, yes, you've got a Star Wars group, you've got a bunch of objects in here, and this is fairly basic. So if we look at the films listing here, Quay is running slowly. Okay, so for example, we can see here right off the bat that the extension gives a custom grid manager, a data manager default grid fields. So we've got, rather than just the label, we've got some data which is more useful. And if I show you here, it'll be in the so this is how it's defined. Data manager grid fields is title, episode ID, director, producer, release date, and this is all within the extension. All the changes we make will be within our application, so we don't change what's in the extension, we write it in our application, and that overrides what is defined in the extension itself. So if we look at one of these, for example, we'll go into here and we'll see the record for one of the films. And you can see, oh, that does look a bit, it looks a bit like it's gone wrong. It's all overflowing, it's not great. And the issue here is that we have defined what the grid fields we want to show are, and by default the view screen will pick these up. So one of the customizations we can make is that, as well as the grid fields we've defined, we can say, yes, I want to define some minimal grid fields which will be used in examples like this. So I will go through and change those for each of the objects. Yes, you'll see throughout this that there's an awful lot of uncommenting code going to be going on. So we'll get rid of that, and that, and we will come back into here. And we will, with all these changes, we'll have to reload the application. I'm hoping it will go faster than Mickey's did. It will probably take sort of 10 seconds each time to reload that.
Thinking the Google Hangout might be
That's probably it, isn't it? Yes. Yes. Yes, I think that's that's probably the common thread, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, that's going to get boring, isn't it? Dear me. Okay, I'll try to keep the relays to a minimum, but that is awful.
Yeah, might have to stagger the viewing of it with the rest of the current cracking.
Yes. Okay, I just want to. Yeah, like Mickey said, it was much quicker yesterday without that running. So that's not your computer, Mickey. It's the. And my fan is now kicking in. Yeah, this is going to be a problem. Yeah, that's. My fan is now going into override. Oh yes, like I said. So we've got.
Right, I'll stop the hangout. If you want to come out of the hangout, stop sharing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Apologies for those watching online, but we're going to be here all day otherwise. Okay. So that has now reloaded, and you can see that with these minimal grid fields that we've designed for this listing, it's much better, and we have a much better looking screen. But we can do better. If we go down to the bottom here, yes, we've got a field on here which is poster art, and that, if you click on that, that will link through to the asset, so you can see that. But it would be nice if in our record view we could see that slightly better. So let's go in here. So we're going to find we have our Star Wars. Where is it? Oh no, I did something different there, didn't I? Yeah, so I have created you can create a custom admin renderer. And you can also say which view group you want an item to be listed in. By default, there are two view groups on a page view. There's the default data view on the left, and then there is the system on the right. You can specify moving items between these, or you can create a completely new group, which is what we're going to do here. So we're going to create an admin view group called poster, and we've got an admin renderer called poster art, which we have set up. And if we look at our there's a handler, isn't it? Yeah. So we've got this. This is essentially a copy of the default asset renderer, but it is showing it with a different size image. That's probably a neat way of doing it, but this overrides that, and we're also going to define some other things on here. We're going to move the API ID into the system view group, and we're going to put our other related data into a related view group. So if it's not that one, it's that one. So if we try that, and this will load. It's still going to take 10 seconds or so to reload the app, but with any luck that'll do it in a timely manner now.
While that's going, did you create a properties file for the groups?
Yes. So I will show you the. So within the. That's not that one. It's the Star Wars film. So within the properties file for the object itself, you can define how the view groups work. So I can say in my poster view group, this is the title. You can say what icon you want to appear on it. You say I want it in the left column, and I want it to come second in the order. The default group will appear first. And similarly, my related objects, I want to come second on the right-hand side. And that is still going.
Is there a standard layout for this, which is used for all the renderings, and can you modify that layout? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. That.
Could be that. The screen sharing thing as well. It's been slow in general, isn't it?
So the residual processes on activity
What is taking the time? That's not really showing anything, is it? Oh, it's coming up there. I don't know if it's going to make. Okay, so here now you can see that we've got the data that we haven't told it to do anything with. That still appearing in the default section up there. We've got our poster art with its bigger image there. That still links through to the asset. And then we've got down the right-hand side, we have our related objects. And so that's just starting to tidy it up, make it a little bit tidier, neater. Right. So now, if we look in our related objects here, we've got so we've got sort of species that appear in this film. Let's look at this. So again here we've got a list of films, and we've got some nice poster art for that, so we can make that look nicer. So if we go and look at the Star Wars species, we're going to create a here. So first of all, we're going to say, okay, by default, we're not going to render the films at all. So now, by saying admin render is none, that item, that record, that field will not be shown in by default in the view. But we're going to do something different with that. So we're going to create our first data manager customization CFC, which we're going to set up here. And what we are going to do is show this. And so we've got a method here which is post render record write col, and so that is that will insert some content at the bottom of, once it's finished rendering all the right column objects it's got, it will then insert this. And so what we're doing, we're going to, this gets passed various arguments. Which arguments get passed to each customization are defined in the documentation, or you can dump them out just to get a good view of that. But in this case, it gets passed the object name, it gets passed a record ID, and it will, if relevant, it will also pass it a version number. So we can use the record ID to do a database lookup to say, okay, I want to get the ID, title, and the poster art for each of the films that's related to this, and then I'm going to render this view here. So I'll save that.
I suggest we maybe, because that's going to kill every time, maybe just go through with the customizations and then improve them out.
Yes, but this is the last bit of the Star Wars one, so I'll do this and I'll show you. So we'll get that running, and I will show you that in here. So that's going to render this view. It returns these ones return a string. Some of them, some of the customizations will modify the data that is already there in the process. Some will return rendered views. Again, all in the documentation. So if we have a look at views, admin Star Wars films. And so what we've got here, we've got a very basic thing that which will take, it'll loop over the query. We're wrapping it in this widget box, widget header to replicate the boxes for each of the sections in there. But then we're just looping over and outputting the film poster and its title. And so there we have it. Instead of having a little browser like this, we've got for each of these we've got linked images, and each of those then links through to that film. So it's just, you can create much nicer ways of visualizing the data for your records. And the other thing I just want to show you on that is the way that we build the admin links for the data manager. So build admin link has always been in here, but there's just a new way of using it for making data manager links. So for instance, say I want to build an admin link, and if you pass it an object name, and if you just pass it an object name, it'll return a link to the listing. If you say, oh yes, an object name and a record ID, it'll take you to that record view. You can also, we'll be showing you later, you can define what operation you want. So it may be you want to edit the record, or you want to add a record. But yeah, so this is the way of creating sort of the custom data manager links. Right, so that is the end of the Star Wars bit of it. So I'm now going to show you a little bit that is from a sort of separate site that I've been building on my own time. It's for my cricket club, but it's a what have we got? If we can find here. So before we saw that you can say data manager group and give it assign it a group, and that will appear in the data manager listing. There's a new setting which is data manager enabled, and if you set that to true instead of assigning a group, then it won't appear in the main listing of objects in the data manager, but it will still have access to all the data manager functionality. And we've got that. And we'll show you how we can add a custom link to the sidebar. So if you start with, we go to our config CFC. So there is settings, admin sidebar items, we append leagues. So this is the item we want to appear in our sidebar. And then if we find it's in admin layout sidebar leagues, this is the code that will render this button in the sidebar if the user has permission to view this this object. Then it will render that in the sidebar, and it decides, it has code in there, logic to work out whether this is the currently selected item. That should show us without, so if we go back here, that should show us without a reload, I think, so because that was already in the config. Okay, so yes, we've now got, like I showed you in the slides earlier, we've now got a custom item in here, and we have leagues. So if I click on that, so we've got a couple in here. If I edit one of these, we can have a look. I will explain what this is doing behind the scenes. Isn't really that important, but essentially what we have here is we're configuring this website so it can go off to an external site, get the current league tables, do a bit of web scraping of a table to get that data, and then we insert it into our database. And I've got a service in here which will do that, but it uses the JSoup Java library, which is brilliant for sort of web scraping and parsing HTML, and you can use sort of either a sort of CSS style or a jQuery style selector syntax to target bits of your page. So here we've got a thing here which shows us that is how it knows where the data rows are in a table within the page it gets. So what we can do here, we'll have a look at that's that. We can get rid of that now. But if we find our so I'll show you a couple of things here. First up, there's the root breadcrumb. There are 3 breadcrumb customization parts. You can define the root, which is what the base of everything in this object is going to be. You can define the object part of the breadcrumb, so that would be the bit that says leagues or whatever your object is and links to the listing for that object. And then you have a record level breadcrumb. Here we're saying, oh yes, basically I don't want a root breadcrumb, so that means that it will appear at the, see here, we've got the very top level, so you've got home. If you had a root breadcrumb, it would appear in between home and leagues. If you were to have, for instance, if you're on the data manager and viewing an object through there, you would have data manager in the middle there as part of your hierarchy. So leagues is our object level, and then that is our record level breadcrumb, and those are customizable in there. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to undo this. So we've got some actions here. So we've got pre-add record action, pre-clone record action, and pre-edit record action. So for each of these, basically I want to say when I'm saving one of these records, before I actually save it, I want to validate that the URL that I've set up and the jQuery type selector are both valid and they work. So these customizations, you get the form data that you've passed in, and you also get the validation result, which has been already validated against the basic rules for your object data. And we can take that and we can work with it. And if I find, so that's in the league table service, so I shall find that. We've got validate URL and selector. So it gets its validation result. I'm trying to get the page, and then I'm trying to get the get a certain part of that page using the selector. And if either of these fails, it will add an error here. It'll add an error to the source URL in here saying could not reach the source URL, or it'll add the table row selector saying that doesn't work. And I will show you that in just a second. What I will also do, because we're going to do a few things at once here so that it works nicely when we update it. So we've got post add record action. So these are the things that happen after the data has been saved. And so what I'm saying is, once I've saved the data, I actually want to go off and get that data and save it locally. And
a question about the form data. You don't use RC scope, which is content box, would be content box style, or?
no, because as part when you submit it, the data manager has already there's a function in there which says, okay, this is my form by definition, and it gets all the form data related to that form, and it's all cleaned, and it means that if you've, for instance, got an unchecked checkbox, that will exist within your form data as well. So it's
you can absolutely. I mean, it does use obviously the RC scope, and you can just use the RC scope, but it also passes the data for the form that you're working on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm also going to take this one out as well. So that's
So that, sorry,
yes.
just one more question.
Yes.
So that means that's automatically generated with every submit you do, or? Okay.
Yes, and if you're doing your own, if you're doing it outside of the data manager, and you're processing a form submission, then you probably want to call the method yourself, saying, "Oh yes, my form data is get."
So you have event.get collection in Cloudbox,
Yeah.
and Preside you have event.get collection for form, and give it
Yeah.
a form name, and it just extracts out what's related.
So it cleans it according to that form, and that's then usually what you want to send to your validation. And so we've got those, and I've also got my pre-render record, and so I'm saying, okay, before I render a record, which is my record view, I'm going to stick a bunch of content in above that, and so I'm going to actually get all the league table data that I've already imported from here, and I'm going to render it at the top. So we should see all of these. While it's loading, I will show you. So we've got the league table widget. That is views, league table widget. Okay, so I'm wrapping it in one of our widget boxes to give it the consistent view, and then I am sort of looping over the data I've got, and I'm going to render out my table. And that is still going.
Just try turning the screen share on just for a second while I'm wondering if that can slow it down.
That one.
Yeah, it won't be much fun for us. Not helpful.
Yeah, it's not doing much. So that should be. Yeah. I thought I'd got everything taken into control. I even got everything worked out so that it would work. Going off to get these things, even if it was all offline. But didn't anticipate that. Okay, right, here we go. That's doing something. So if we go back, right. So here now, if we make this something like that, that is still a valid URL, so that's going to work. But when we say save changes, it's going to do its check, and it should come. Yes, it could not read this. So this is our custom validation thing. It's using the JSOUP library. It's going off, and it can't retrieve this. And similarly, if I put that right, but change that, that should then not actually be able to get the data it wants from that page. No, that didn't work. So it's doing more than just a validation of your of what you've put in the form. It's saying, actually, does this work in real life? So if I put that right now, I'm going to save it. What it's doing now, when it saves, after it saves, it's then going off to collect all your all the data, and then when it renders it at the top of our record, so as well as the data here, which is how it's all defined, it's actually rendering out what the league table data for that is. So this is the data that we've scraped and inserted locally. What you can also do, and what we did there was pre-render record. So instead of that, you can say render record, and the difference there is that will replace the whole of that that record listing, because essentially once you set it up, you don't need to see what all the settings are. You just want to say, okay, show me the table. If you go in and edit it, you can still edit the settings, but you don't really need to see them all in there. So I'll probably show you that next time I reload. What you can also do, you can add some extra buttons to admin. So by default, you've got your edit, you've got your clone, you've got your delete. But for this record, we can add in another. Another one. So we've got saying extra top right buttons for a view record. This gets passed, among other things. Well, the main thing it gets is args actions, and so those are the buttons that have already been defined, which are defined like this. They have a link, they have a class, the button class, they have an icon class, and they have a title. So we want to create a new top right button with an action which is refresh league table. So we want a button up there that when we click it, it'll go off manually and get the latest data. In the system, we also have it's running on a scheduled task, so it'll go off every hour or two and check anyway. But yes, you will probably sometimes want to do it manually. So we're using the build admin link here. We've got our refresh league table. This is what is doing it. So we're saying from our league table service, we want to update that table with the ID that has come in. We want to give it a nice message, and then we want to redirect back to to the same page, which is the record view page. But this is a new operation. It doesn't know about this. This is it knows about things like view record, edit record, delete, things like that. But we need to tell Preside how to build a link for this new operation. And so there's this, which is build refresh league table link. So it's build whatever your operation is link. And it's fairly simple. It gets past a record ID in your arguments. It may or may not have a query string already. So we just build a link like this and say, okay, it's going to link to data manager league refresh league table, which is this method here, which is a public method. All these other methods, customizations, are private methods, but this one will need to be a public one. I'm going to create another button at the same time, just to save on time. So here, this is an extra button I'm going to add as well, so I'll remove that and put it in up here. So we're adding that button. We're also adding this button, which is view league table source. So this is not just an action which does something and then redirects back. This is actually creating a whole new page in the data manager. All it's going to do here is show the source page in an iframe, but it can be whatever you want it to do. It can be it can be other forms. It can be anything. It's limitless, really. So again, we're building our view league table source link, which is pretty much the same as that previous one. And what then we do here is we're going to say event initialize data manager page, and you tell it an object name and a record ID if you have one. And what that does is it sets up all the basic scaffolding for the data manager page. There's a bunch of stuff in there. It goes, so for instance, it will go off and it will put it'll get you your record. It will get you, so it'll put a whole bunch of stuff in the PRC scope. So you've got a record ID. It'll get you a record, which is the query that has retrieved that record, a record label. This is the sort of thing you might use in a title, an object name, object title, and object title plural. So it's all stuff that you might want to use to build your page, to build your breadcrumbs. And we're going to say, going to add an admin breadcrumb onto the end of our thing, which is league table source page, and we'll see that. And then we're setting up some things that are going to be used in our view. So we've got the source URL is the source URL from our record, which has been got, and we can then set the page title, the page subtitle, and the page icon. So I'm going to save that now and refresh this. There are. Wait for that to go up. So there will be a few things I've added here in one go. I was going to do them one at a time, but I'll show you those in one go. And so I will show you the. Where's this gone? So yes, here's the view for that page. It's fairly basic, really. Okay, this is the URL we've got from the PRC, and if that has length, then we're going to show it in an iframe in the middle of our page. It's not exactly rocket science, but it's just a basic way of showing a completely custom page.
Just wondering while that's reloading, if
yes.
you're able, just for the last 5 minutes, to get back on the screen share because I don't think that was what was killing it by the looks of it.
Okay. Right, this is now reloaded in the background. So you can see, first up here, the first thing we did was, instead of adding this content at the top of our page, this content is now completely what our page is. So we're not showing the default data manager view stuff. So we've got that, but we've still got the ability to edit it, and that will take us off to the same edit screen. Because in general, we don't need to see what the configuration is for this. We're interested in that data. We have here are two new buttons that we've added. So there's refresh table. We click that, and if you see, once it reloads, you can see this will change. So it's going off. It's getting the data, and it shows, oh yes, this data was now last updated now. So that's just a manual refresh of it. And then we've got our completely custom page, which is our table source page. And so you can see all that does is it creates a new table. We told it to add this to the breadcrumb, so you've got your leagues, you've got the record, and then we've got what this page is. This is the external website that we've gone to scrape the data from. And yes, there's one more thing which I will uncomment it first, and then I will tell you what it's doing while it's reloading. And that one as well. Is that everything? There's that as well. Right, so while that is reloading in the background, I will tell you what I've been doing. What we've got now is a customization. So if we're assuming that, if this was in an extension, then we could say, yes, we're going to create this customization, which is post view league table source. So this is again our view league table source. This is the page that was generating, it was showing that page in the iframe, and we're saying that if so if this object has a customization, which you pass it the object name and the customization you're looking for, then it says, okay, I want to render that and put it in a variable that I can then use and display. And then if we look at our source in here, we're saying, okay, we're going to output whatever that is. If it has generated something there, we'll output it here. And that's loaded. And then here I've done it in the same file, but often if you're doing that, this bit would be in your extension, and then something like this, which is implementing that customization, would be in your own application, which is providing extra functionality to the extension. And so all it's going to do is return a string, which is this paragraph. any luck, that has now done. So, where's this? Oh, shall we have a look at that? So we've got that, and then we go and have a look at our table source page. And that hasn't put it there. What have I forgotten to do? I've missed something out. Right. No, there's something obvious I've missed out there. I can't remember what it is. But yes, that would be how you would do that. Again, these are all in the documentation. I will show you this bit, which is yes, we've added extra buttons at the top, but if we have a look at our data manager listing, I have also, it's not showing either. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'll show you this in a second. The last thing I want to show you is custom permissions. So there are two bits here. So here there is a check permission customization. It gets passed a key which is related to the action being performed and whether it should throw on error, because this method is used for two different things. It is used to say, okay, yes, just tell me yes or no, is this action permitted, or yes, is it permitted, and if it's not, then show me an access denied page. So that's what the bottom bit does. But yes, you can put in all sorts of custom stuff in here. For instance, here I've got a thing that's saying if this key, if it's doing an add, edit, clone, or delete, and the day of the week is Wednesday, then it's not permitted. It could be whatever you want it to be. It could be related to the actual data in the record itself. And similarly, there is operation allowed. Oh, that's spinning up again. Yeah, fan. Yes, the difference between, I mean, the check permission says, does this user have permission to do this? Is operation allowed? Is this operation actually allowed to be done by anyone on this? It's not user-based, it's object-based. So it's saying, yes, for instance, here I've got, I'm saying, yes, if it's a Sunday and if it's an add, edit, or clone, then don't allow it. And otherwise, allow it. But so I'm then saying return sort of whether or not the operation is delete. So essentially that's saying never allow a delete. It's the same as saying disallow. Disallowed operations is delete in your configuration of your object. But yes, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do there. Okay, that's reloaded this time. So you can see I've added in here extra record actions for grid listing. So we've added our buttons at the top, and now we actually want extra actions on each of the rows of the grid listing. And so I'm saying, okay, this runs for each record, and it has the actions that it already has defined, and I'm saying, okay, I want to add this extra refresh link at the second position of the array. And so we can see now we've got our view, edit, clone, delete, but in the middle we also have our refresh table link. And finally, I can now show you, now it's reloaded, we should see the our customization that we added in to say to render post here. Yes, so that's working now, it's reloaded now. So it's saying this is our new customization that we have defined, and it is returning data at the bottom of here. And I think that pretty much covers everything. I'm going to close that. These are the documentation for it. It is quite, there's a basic introduction, and there are 3 pages of stuff. This is our basic stuff. This is things like your data manager groups and things like that, and what the fields are you want on there. We have customizing the data manager. This gives an overview of all of the customization points that are there. So for instance, if we have, go down to looking at viewing records, these are all the ones. You've got render record, you've got pre-post render, you've got pre-roast render, the left column or the right column, and then there's the top right buttons. And if you have a look at each of these, it says, it'll tell you, yes, this is what's getting, this is the data you're getting passed through that you can work with, and it'll tell you probably also what you should be, yes, the action is expected to return the rendered HTML of the record as a string. So, yeah, it tells you what you get, what you're expected to send back, and then there's a page here which is all about customizing the view screen. So yes, I mean, it's definitely worth reading through all that. There's quite a lot to take in, but and there's a whole bunch of stuff that I haven't covered today because there are so many different customizations. But if I add that. So, as I said, what could possibly go wrong? Some final observations. You should note that, especially the data customizations that you do, this post, add or edit record and things like that, they only occur when you're using the data manager. So if you do if your code updates a record from elsewhere, then that won't happen. If you want something that happens every time you update a certain record, then you should go with an interceptor that will look at things like the post insert or post update record and things like that. As I said, there are many more customizations that I haven't covered, and the docs describe them all in great detail, and you should yes, get out there and start experimenting with them. Yes, so the questions, docs, the Slack Preside CMS channel is always a good place to ask for advice. We usually get back pretty quickly to questions. And yeah, there we go. I don't know if anyone has any questions for now, or you can come and speak to me or Dom later. And stunned into silence. Sorry.
Do you have more samples for customized admin interfaces? Because they all,
Yeah.
they
Yes.
all look more or less basic. So if you have like records with, let's say, 100 of fields, and you need to group it somehow.
Yeah. Well, you can see in some of those we had our sort of tabbed interfaces and stuff like that, and so yes, I mean, if you've got the data, you can present it however you want.
What's about filtering and listing? What you can, what's possible there? Because if you have a grid and let's say I want an invoice from last month where the customer has not paid, etc., etc.
So the rules engine also applies to data filters, and so should be able to show, and it automatically creates expressions based on the data model, including relationships. So you can create pretty cool filters with that just based on the data model. It's in the interface, but
yeah. So if I look at, let's go back to Data Manager and. Yeah, well, exactly, yes. Yeah. Yes, so all your data manager listings have this search, which is the sort of the default search. So you can say, you can do a basic quick search, and it filters like that. That will filter on, by default, on the record, on the data that are being shown there. But as I said, you can say, I also want that to look in these other fields.
And the search works on SQL or Elasticsearch? Or?
yeah, just database.
It's database, yes. Then you've got the advanced filter as well, which is similar to the expressions that Mickey was showing us earlier about the conditional content. But yes, you can say, okay, so show me all characters who have appeared in more than three films. And that's filtered, there's 10 of them. And so the built into the data manager, you have an extremely powerful search, and you can say, okay, and I want to save that search for later. 3 or more films, I want to make it a favorite, so that's actually going to appear up here. If I go back to the basic search, then I've got my favorite filters, and I can just click on that straight away and say, okay, apply that. So yes, the filtering is extremely powerful.
Can you leave customizable fields within the filter for that you can change it later? Like the 3, is that added?
You
Or
can't.
Not for a favorited filter.
No, not. No. Yeah.
I mean, because it's all editable anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a one more layer of complexity for users, isn't it? It's but yeah, yes, those, all the filtering is yes, it's very powerful, and you can create your new filter expressions as well. So if there's something that isn't covered there, or if you've got some custom data that you want it to be able to check something against.
But I think if it all works in SQL, if you have a lot of records, it will run now the database at some point, or?
Not in our experience. So it was written so that for the newsletter sending, right? So we might have 100,000 users, and we wanted to know who this newsletter is going to get sent to. So rather than doing conditions, which would have to be processing a record and go, is this true, we create a SQL filter. It's all in one query. And of course, there has potential for that query to be slow, but with the right indexes,
Yeah.
it performs well.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Should we finish there?